Welcome to another session of Vendavo's Revenue Roundtable. And in this, we attempt in 10 minutes to answer 3 questions. Today, we're going to be talking about a topical item that we're hearing out about in the news quite a bit right now. Then we'll turn to things that we're hearing specifically from Vendavo customers, and then a little bit of a glance at new capabilities for delivering outcomes. Joining me today, Ben Blaney, our Vice President for Business Consulting for the North America team. And I, of course, am Mitch Lee, your profit evangelist. So Ben, let's get right to it. Topical items. There's a lot of noise out there, a lot of things we could talk about, but let's talk about costs and prices and profitability.
Sure, Mitch. Yeah, absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of volatility in raw material indices at the moment. Ones you'll have seen in the news, steel in particular, and lumber. Lumber is changing to such a degree, changes up, to be absolutely clear, that it's adding $30,000 to the price of the average new construction home here in the United States. This is a tremendous change, and it's an example of how all organizations just need to be super aware of what's going on in their raw material indices, that the hedging strategy is in place. And even if you have a hedging strategy, then you may be able to take advantage of the cost change that's apparent to the general public and jam through something of a price increase and just take the rest in margin. But that requires an element of agility on your part. It's tremendously interesting.
Absolutely. The dynamic pricing is now driven by the need to dynamically recover and protect your margin. That's common knowledge for a lot of folks, but a lot of folks that had fat margins that weren't looking at 30% swings in houses because of lumber, that's a new territory for them. All right, as we talk with our customers, Ben, you're out there in the field, face-to-face with existing customers pretty much every day. What are you hearing from them relative to this kind of noise?
Well, the big topic after these pure kind of raw material areas is the impact of this global shortage in semiconductor chips. Now, of course, we've got customers in the semiconductor space, both manufacturers and distributors, but also, OEM manufacturers of other goods that have semiconductors in them, which at this point in, the world is many, many products. Every fridge, every car, lawn mowers, they've all got chips in. And so the knock-on effects, so there are effects for our semiconductor manufacturers and our distributors, and there are effects for these other discrete manufacturers using these chips. Now, this is a super interesting story. What happened at the beginning of the pandemic is the automotive manufacturers scaled back their ordering for chips because they thought no one's going anywhere, so no one's going to buy new cars, so we can hold off on those expenses. And the other side of that is that other manufacturers of standard computers, but also graphics cards, standalone graphics cards, things like that, but also home devices, any smart devices around the home, including, as I said, fridges, but also smart speakers and those things that have really taken off. They doubled down in their orders because they knew people are going to be at home, people are going to do projects, they're going to want to have the latest equipment and hardware for Zoom meetings, even not for work, for family reasons. And so there's this tremendous squeeze. Now the auto manufacturers have had to stop production because they don't have the chips to make the cars. The point here being, Mitch, that we live in an integrated world now, that, we had the ship stuck in the Suez Canal, and and we kind of talked about that. I think I wrote a blog about that a month or so ago. There are knock-on effects. Items stuck in a ship are a lagging indicator of things not coming out of semiconductor fab shops, mostly in Taiwan, as it happens. Companies need to be thinking about the componentry of their finished good. That raw materials aren't just the steel, the high-density polyethylene. They are sometimes small elements, and that the global supply chain is going to impact a company's ability to produce. What we're going to see, in fact, is really interesting too, which is that the United States is providing incentives, subsidies, and so is Europe, to incent the semiconductor manufacturers to have fabrication shops here in the United States and North America more generally, and also in mainland Europe. This is competing with the Chinese infrastructure rollout, part of the Belt and Road Initiative you'll have read about, which is driving semiconductors there. And so what we might see, it doesn't happen overnight, these things are complicated to build, is a kind of a geopolitical impact between these sort of competing regions. The other thing that's super interesting about Taiwan, in particular, this hub for semiconductor manufacture, is they're in a drought. Does that matter? Turns out it does. Water is tremendously important to the manufacture of semiconductors. So actually, even the organizations who have confirmed orders with the fab shops are having trouble because production is down because of a lack of precipitation in Taiwan.
Absolutely. I love the assumption back when the automotive folks were figuring, we'll just stop ordering chips and they'll be there when we come back. Other things happen in the world, other things, and soaked up that capability, and no chips to be had. All right, let's close this out, Min. New capabilities, what are people talking about in terms of how do businesses address these kind of things? What are things around delivering outcomes with all this noise, all this dynamic aspects?
Yeah, absolutely. You bet. Gartner, terrific organization. We partner with them closely. We respect them enormously. Gartner came out with a great publication quite recently called The Future of Sales. Would encourage anyone to Google that and get that from wherever they get their Gartner publications. It lays out 4 steps of the future of selling, and it's super interesting. It's talking about the ways in which customers want to engage. It's talking about how to position sales to help with complex buying circumstances. The world is getting more complex. It talks about providing digital skills to salespeople. Okay, and we can, we provide elements of that ourselves here at Roundtable, and then building, other sales technology roadmaps. Terrific 4 steps. I wholeheartedly agree. I would say there's a 5th unmentioned step, which is a focus on the commercial offer, the pricing. Okay, that when you move into this omni-channel world, omni-channel is a world people throw around without really defining. But the truth is, what it means is that the function of a pricer is more important than ever. The prices have to make sure that prices are synchronized appropriately. I'm not saying the same, synchronized appropriately into the digital channels, into the traditional outside sales channels, into the distribution channels, distributors, resellers, partners, VARs, and into third-party digital channels like Amazon. And the prices function is now going to be to make sure that in whichever channel an item is sold, the sell-in price reflects the appropriate sell-out price, so that the consumer who is experiencing this omni-channel world doesn't differentiate channel because of price, that they ultimately consume the appropriate price for that channel. Okay,
Absolutely.
Lots to unpack there.
Yeah. The last thing you want to do as a buyer is doing their research. More research, 80% of the research is done before they ever talk to a seller. You do not want to add confusion to that equation by giving them different offers at different places just because you didn't manage your channels. Ben, as always, a great pleasure talking with you. Everyone, again, this has been Blaney, our Vice President of Business Consulting for North America. I, of course, am your humble host, your profit evangelist here. And until we meet again, have a profitable day.